tired. I've been up for like 3 days. So let's get
Good
started.
day and fans from around the world. The saga continues. Illegal trapped miners, and with me to continue the discussion is Mustafa Jinadu, Lerato Kuzwayo. You guys are welcome to the show. I'm still Afolabi.
Sure, sure.
Okay, thank you. What facts do you have on the ground, Afalabi? Has anything changed that you know of? Then we'll go to Lorato.
Yeah, basically the rescue operations are still on. They are not quite sure of the figures of the number, the statistics of trapped miners. Community representatives have said that over 4,000 miners are on the ground, but the government disputes this figure. Now, the discrepancy raises concerns over the government's truthfulness and transparency on this kind of crisis. And there are a lot of health and safety concerns. Some people have not had food for like a week. Some civil societies highlight that denying basic sustenance violate constitutional rights like food and water. And the fears are, the fears are rising that the operation may recover mostly diseased individuals, dead people, basically.
Yeah. So yes, I don't know. This is a bad situation because to me, it's a standoff between the government and criminals, and I'm not going to take sides. The criminals are human beings, but at the same time, the government had to act its own way. So this is kind of like a tragedy. What do you know that's going on, Lorato?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same. That the rescue operations are ongoing, and it is, from what I'm hearing, a pretty lengthy process. If they're doing it through the one opening that they're using, I think it takes about
Yeah.
45 minutes to take one person out. But there is also then another opening, to which is kind of like an old shaft, that actually the miners did try to use it a while ago, but they couldn't access it because there was flooding somewhere, um, in the underground, somewhere in the shaft. So
Yeah.
some pathways were blocked off and things like that. So I think from what I've been reading, these guys have been trying to make their way out for quite a while now. And I think in the past 2 weeks, 1,200 uh, miners have surfaced, and most have been arrested, or all of them have been arrested. Those 1,200.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I think then the numbers have been a lot slower now, because I think this week they they were talking about this idea of like taking 45 minutes just to release one person, because I'm not sure if they don't have access to the so-called Margaret shaft, which is an old shaft that the mine itself used to use while it was
Yeah.
still in operation. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So this goes back. I'm not blaming the government, but well, I'm going to blame them from the consequences, but not from their morals. You can blame somebody after the fact by saying that they made a mistake. I think the government made a mistake in how they dealt with this by closing up all those things. They should have taken a more direct action or slowed it down and do it because a lot of people are going to die. And before we know it, most people will die. And to be honest with you, I'm not concerned about the criminals. I'm concerned about other innocent people who were down there. Because to me, this is a place in which a lot of people were hostage. But moving
Yeah.
forward, like I said, it means I'm not blaming the South African government. What I'm saying is that this is a textbook case for everybody because we're looking around the world. We're looking at how I don't think a lot of Americans realize that Israel would bomb kids in Palestine, but now we're seeing the consequences of not thinking out our actions and of reckless capitalism, and also a system in which nobody wants to take accountability or even take bold steps. To me, a bold step would have been to just go down there and cause chaos and get people out. But now it's slowly trickling up. So it's kind of like my prediction. Later on, people are going to look at this and see it as a tragedy. I'm going to ask you what you think about that, Lorato. Then you can take us on the angle you wanted to bring up from yesterday. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened in terms of like the legal aspects,
Yeah.
uh, of of this entire sort of debacle is that the police did shut off certain points so that they could sort of bottleneck the traffic towards one specific direction, so that they could apprehend these guys wherever it is that they would come out. And apparently they also sent, I mean, there's been some kind of communication between the police, the army, and rescue workers, along with some of the community members that are there. And according to that communication, they've been telling them where it would be safe for them to exit. So I don't know if people have just been reluctant to exit because they know that they are going to be arrested or something like that. But the High Court didn't make a ruling to say that all the openings that were shut need to be opened, so that they can avert the humanitarian catastrophe that could, like the fallout. So I think that is part of the operations that the police are doing, that even other alternative openings are being opened. But of course they're making sure that when those things happen, then they have enough personnel there to apprehend the miners.
So I'm not gonna press fingers, but their tone has become more conciliatory, because at first the tone was, oh, smoke the police out. I'm not everybody, but some people like to smoke the criminals out and this, but now it's more kind. But my thing is that I'm not judging the police. I'm going to say this is a casualty of capitalism. But I think we foresaw that this type of thing can happen if you block all these exits, and I also think a lot of people can't get up there because they're enslaved and there's criminals down there. But to me, this is just chaos. I'm not going to even blame the criminals. It's pure chaos. And the predictable nature of this is that a lot of people will suffer because all these things are closed up and people are coming in and out to bring food. There's less air coming in. But yeah, it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah,
but moving forward,
I mean the conditions underground are horrific, because there's fumes down there, toxic fumes. The water that floods some of these spaces is also like acid mine water. So it's hazardous.
Yes. So to me, this is like Lord of the Flies. You know that book, Lord of the Flies, where there's only children running the town.
Sure.
This is what it's like. So I'm not going to go too hard on the government, but this thing has been allowed to go on for too long, because there's even more hundreds of mines all over South Africa in which this type of thing behaves, and it hasn't been addressed yet. So there needs to be a policy and a plan of action, even aside from the Constitution and, oh, let's take care of human life. There needs to be a decisive, because sometimes within a society, even within a family, you can have rules and constitutions, but at some point you may be overwhelmed and now you have to act. So this is like a national emergency. What do you think? I'm not just talking about this one mine, the whole issue of underground mines. And it's not only in Nigeria, I mean, in South Africa, they have this problem in Congo, where they have artisanal miners also, young kids who are being taken by warlords. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's pretty much the same problem in all resource rich countries.
Same thing. Nigeria too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And with the South African particular aspect, is that, I mean, when you look at the longer story, going back from like 2014, a lot of the guys who are part of these illegal mines or artisanal mine groupings are people who were retrenched from the mines when the mines closed up.
Yeah.
In 2014, that's how they know how to do what it is they're doing and how to work how to navigate underground, because these tunnels, according to what we know from upground, are unmapped. So no one is really sure.
They were relying on indigenous workers to know the map. in their head. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then these miners who then worked at these places before are the ones who then went back after
Yeah.
having stayed unemployed for years, and then reaching the point of desperation that led to this.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying about the government needing to sort of intervene, I think this is the intervention.
Yeah.
What we're
Sorry, but
seeing.
it's a little bit late, but I'm not blaming it because we know a lot of governments. But the only reason I'm saying being critical is that so moving forward, it doesn't happen again. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So this is part of a long-term operation, according
Yeah.
to our state communications, that they are dealing with this with all due seriousness,
Yeah.
um, and providing all resources that they can
Yeah.
to sort of end the scourge.
Yeah.
But I think, one of um, the 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 main things that I think keep propping up is kind of like the general lawlessness that is happening within the country.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not gonna
yeah,
lie to
that
you.
this
South Africa is the most liberal country in the world, but liberalism leads to lawlessness too, because there's no authoritarian structure which allows criminal elements to take over. Continue. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I think, this general lawlessness is what has led to things like this propping up.
Yeah.
Um, the the fact that some of these people who are down there mining are people who are immigrants, who are illegal, who are
Oh yeah,
in the
there's a lot of
country.
illegal people there from Zimbabwe and
Um,
Southern Africa.
yeah, there's a lot of other immigrants who possibly came here legally to work in the mines, and after the mines sort of fell down, they never went back home. So this idea of not checking in on people, not knowing where people are within the country, is what is causing a lot of the problems, but also the porous nature of our borders, with corrupt officials giving out false documents, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
not
but
really
there's
false
a deeper
documents,
problem though
because they
because
give out documents for bribes and things like that. So this entire climate is what is giving rise to more and more problems, and this mining problem is actually just one of them.
yeah, but here's the thing. Even if you take away the illegal workers and stuff, there's a problem in South Africa's economy in which its resources are not even being used for its legal citizens. And
Yeah,
we also want to remember that in Europe, if you're a European, you have free transportation. If the EU, all members of the EU can go back and forth. And this concept of this is South Africa, this is Namibia, this is Botswana, this is Zimbabwe, is this is a Western concept. It's not an African concept to have flags and countries. And it's causing problems. It's a separate problem. But what I'm trying to say is that this arbitrary, like I live in Nigeria, and in Nigeria, where I live in Lagos, people speak Yoruba in Togo. You see what I'm saying, Afolabi? Afolabi. Is Afolabi with us?
yeah. I think he's muted, and he might be on.
Afolabi, you might be on mute. Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm following.
Yeah,
Yeah. So what I was going to say, so here's an example. In Nigeria, you have the Yoruba who live as part of Nigeria. Then 20 miles from them in Togo, you have Yoruba people in Togo. But the Yoruba people are closer to people. They're part of Nigeria, which is a country which goes to Niger, which is people who are not culturally diverse to people from Lagos. Do you see what I'm saying, Afolabi?
Yes, I see.
Afolabi. No, so the
Yeah.
point I'm making is that these borders are made arbitrarily. So people who live in Zimbabwe and these plots, they're very close to Limpopo and those areas. And they are the same people, but because there's a line there, there's a division. That's a
Yes.
different story. You understand what I'm saying, Afalabi? So
Yes,
in
I understand.
Nigeria, I'm saying that some Igbo people who live in Igbo land are closer to Cameroonians
Oh,
that are
sure.
closer to Yorubas. So what I'm
Sure.
saying is that it's an unjust structure. the
Sure.
borders in Africa, and Julius Malema has said this: the borders in Africa need to be torn down,
Of course,
so
and
that Africa is one country.
it was
And
encouraged by the West.
no, the West does it by separating us and putting us into little pockets, which causes economic issues. And if we look at a country like Botswana, they're doing well because they control their resources, but they're much smaller. You see what I'm saying, Lorato? Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. And so
So I
this
think,
type of thing, it still leads to xenophobia, but that's a separate issue. The main issue is that this mining issue that's going on, a lot of these illegal workers that are coming, it's the same thing in the US. They're doing work for South Africa because the labor is cheaper than the average South African a South African person won't take that type of cheap labor. And that
yeah,
means that
yeah,
South
yeah.
Africa's economy has too much inflation from capitalism, in which they can't pay South African workers. And that's a problem with capitalism, in which foreign companies come and take your resources, and then they don't want to pay your country's workers what they deserve, so they pay illegal foreigners. This is why South Africa needs to control its resources. And also, we have to bring the question, does South Africa or any country in the world really need to do such mining? Because if you have a sustainable economy, you should be focused more on agriculture and things. But that type
Sure.
of mining is to feed the
Oil and
Western
gas, yeah.
countries, the oil, gas, and plutonium and gold and minerals, which
Uranium,
African
yeah.
nations don't need, because we have sustainable economies by ourselves. You see what I'm saying, Lorato?
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
off on a
I mean
tangent.
that
Yeah.
not so much. I think it goes back to what we've been saying
Yeah.
in this conversation, to say where are these resources
Oh
going?
no, we know where they're going. Britain, also China.
Yeah,
China does mining in South Africa. It's going to foreign countries.
yeah.
Of course, France.
Yeah,
France.
France
so
too. Yeah.
yeah, so the main problem that is feeding this issue is this need to siphon the resources
Yeah.
by any means, because they will do it by any means. It doesn't matter if the gold is illicit or not.
Yeah.
There are ways in which people buy it and people clean it. I think I remember an Al Jazeera documentary that covered how Zimbabwean gold leaves the country illicitly and goes
Yeah.
into Dubai.
Also
And
Lesotho too.
yeah, and this is how these gold bars are then sort of brought into the cleaner market once they've left that particular country.
Diamonds, same thing. Diamonds, yeah.
Diamonds, yeah. So the and this is something that has been happening, I think, for quite a while now. We are only becoming aware of it, or I mean, we're only having this intense of a conversation about it now because we have this humanitarian crisis with the miners that are sort of sticking to their guns and staying underground.
Those guys are hardcore, man. If I were them, I would come up and get a free meal in jail. I'm serious. I'm serious, because I'm going to tell you the truth. And this is South Africa. South Africa would not kill these people, and these people won't spend up to 2 years in jail. Just come up and face your face. That goes to show us that maybe it's politicians. I'm not blaming South Africa, because to me this is a multinational problem. But there are some powers that be in South Africa which are profiting off of this, and they don't want this thing to be resolved this way. Because if you follow the paper trail, it's going to lead to the parliament. You get my point? Yeah.
No, for sure.
I think at this point, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it would lead to possibly some connected higher ups, or someone connected in the higher ups, who would be making sure. I mean, how do these things make it out of the country? How do the resources make it out of the country? So this is also a part of the problem that I'm speaking about when I speak.
Not only that, how does it happen in the country? Because there's political people who are involved in the criminal ring. It's the same thing. I mean, look at the U.S. George Bush and Ronald Reagan were involved in cocaine trade with Venezuela, and we see the immigrant crisis in America today because the U.S. government was allowing cocaine. Also, Bill Clinton, he was involved with the Republicans. That's why they let him stay in power because he could snitch on them. This is the problem of crony capitalism. Yeah, continue. Yeah.
No, for sure, for sure. I mean, immediately when people are heavily armed and they have access to explosives and things like that, I mean, these are not things that you easily have a grasp
No,
to.
and they don't
I
get
think this,
into South Africa. South Africa has a navy,
yeah,
and it doesn't get into the country without politicians and powerful people. You know, guys like the Guptas and co. Back in the day, people didn't realize why they were making a big shout about the Guptas. You get my point? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I
Even
mean,
I
there
like
was,
Mbeki, but Mbeki was involved in some arms scandals too. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, there was that other story of another group of miners or people who were arrested with about 3 million rands worth of gold bearing materials
that's
in
terrible.
KZN.
That's
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah, yeah. Which shows you that beyond the northwest or beyond Gauteng, where there's still a lot of gold. Um,
Yeah.
this problem is sort of like nationwide.
And there's other things.
And
People think gold is just a regulatory thing. Also, gold is used for production. Gold, platinum, and countries like Australia are profiting off of the looting of South African resources. It's going to South Africa. You've heard of that also, Lorato, right? Yeah, yeah. Not to
yeah,
South Africa,
yeah,
going to
yeah.
Australia, where a lot of white South Africans are moving. Yeah, yeah,
Sure. So
yeah,
so yeah. So I mean, and the question of even what is regulated mining, and the outflows of not only resources but also profits from
yeah.
those
Profits. That's the big issue. Yeah,
has not even been dealt with, because a lot of these profits um, leave the country without being taxed, or
oh yeah,
um,
yeah.
I think I think
I saw this data. It's no longer on the internet. They blocked it from the internet. 70% of South Africa's GDP leaves the country to foreign
yeah,
corporations.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember the
70% of
last time.
so Lorato, let me sorry to cut in front of not Lorato, sorry to cut in front of you. Afalabi, can you imagine if 70% of Nigeria's resources is going into a foreign bank account, which is probably true also.
Yes,
Get my
you're right.
point.
You're absolutely right.
It's,
It's,
that
it's,
is terrible.
it's probably happening.
Like for example, Lorato in Nigeria. I'm scared to go to Nigeria because my friends may tell people that I'm there and they can kidnap me and they'll get money from my dad.
Of course,
So it shows you that it's because
they
of
ask for
poverty.
ransom. Yeah.
That's because of poverty, because your resources aren't feeding your nation. Sorry, Lorato, continue your thought. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think, I mean, at the root of that problem, it is about all these resources, the land
Yeah.
itself, being used to benefit the people, and the less and less that happens, the more poverty we see on the ground, the more joblessness and all those things, and
Yeah.
therefore criminal elements will start to form in the way that we've seen them, and then add to this idea that we were speaking about earlier of lawlessness,
Yeah.
where corruption is rife, bribes are easily paid to get things through.
Yeah.
Criminals get let off easily, even after they've been arrested. Dockets disappear and things like that because people are
Yeah.
being paid off. So this is the sort of like the network of the problem, like
Yeah.
the web of it. Is spread out so far among so many things,
Yeah.
that it's becoming problematic. I mean, when I was mentioning also this idea of immigrants, um, and you were talking about how the borders need to be loosened. This is an interesting thing that Africa needs to do, but how does Africa do that in the kind of environment that we're in?
Yeah. So here's what I'll
Mm,
say. Sorry to cut in front of you.
mm,
Once you do away with corporate capitalism, so for example, if South Africa controlled its resources, it could now bring in migrants for cheaper labor if it controlled its resources, because then the whole country would do well, and then those migrants can assimilate into the economy. But there's no
Yeah,
space for that because after those migrants come into South Africa, after the profit is made, it goes to Europe.
Sure.
But Africa should be like Europe, where there's free trade. So, for example, like in Portugal, even though
yeah,
I'm a
yeah,
black
no,
person, let me give you an example. So in Portugal, even though I'm a black person, I can go to Portugal now and get a job and get citizenship because they need skilled labor. And it will help their country because they have underpopulation. You understand? They'll give me because I have an American passport. So the same thing needs to be part of South Africa, in which the economy needs to be reimagined and the borders loosened, so that no matter who comes in, because Africa has almost inexhaustible resources.
sure,
But
sure,
the
sure,
problem,
sure.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but
But
I
also
think
once this, yeah,
I
yeah. Go
think
ahead.
I
Yeah.
think that the point that I was leading to, because I was just speaking on the idea of like legal frameworks or
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
or,
yeah.
or
The legal
frameworks
framework. Yeah.
or frameworks of law that could be applied throughout the SADC region, for example, because as we mentioned, Zimbabwe has the same problem with
Yeah.
illicit gold outflows. DRC has the same problem. So before we get to that sort of space, like you say, crony capitalism has to be done away with.
Yeah. But also the West needs to be black. So for example, in South Africa is a non-aligned country. So it's not the problem within South Africa now is, for example, what's his name? Ramaphosa belongs to foreign corporations. He's the chair. He's on the board of corporations with foreign countries. That needs to be blocked. You understand what I'm saying?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But
I
not just
mean
there.
that.
Nigeria too. Tinubu
Yeah,
is. You heard Tinubu is an asset of the CIA
Yeah.
because he was caught for doing cocaine. The
Yeah.
Nigerian president was caught for doing cocaine long before he became president, and they said, "Oh, you're going to become president of Nigeria. We'll put you in jail." 40 years ago. You see what I'm saying, Olarato?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, this is the kind of lawlessness that I'm speaking about continent wise, to say it becomes problematic when we try to make these kinds of moves happen with the kinds of leaderships that we have, with the kind of laws that we have, with the kind of law enforcement officials that we have,
Yeah.
that are corrupt. So this is where the problem is, um, in terms of like where it's at its root,
Yeah.
with regards to, and this is made deliberately by
The West. Yeah.
like systemically, so that resources can be easily accessible.
Well, we have to go soon, but here's my solution. PAC, the Students Movement in South Africa, EFF, these countries, these organizations need to have grassroots where people say, this is it. This is what happened in China, the Cultural Revolution. I'm not saying kill the people in power, but by any means necessary, take control of your country. And you have two ideas. Nationalism, which means this is our country, because South Africa is separate from Nigeria. Nigeria is separate from Egypt. So you have nationalism, but then also Pan-Africanism, and there needs to be a balance. And I think that's what BRICS is. We look out for our individual aspects. We compete against each other, but we also trade with each other. But the only way that can work is through an anti-Western imperial movement. And this goes back to what you said long ago, is which people on the ground in South Africa, in Nigeria, in Congo need to be taught. I hate to say it, the West is our enemy. I didn't want to use the word white man. It's our enemy. Then when you do that, you can say, okay, I'm from Congo, so a Nigerian can't just come here or go there. But we're also African, so we need to have, like Europe. In Europe, they have, each country has its own economy, but they're still part of the broader movement.
But
Trading bloc. A trading bloc.
there are
Yeah.
conventions
Yeah.
that ensure that all
Yeah.
these things happen
Yeah.
in an orderly manner.
Because that's how South America works. Brazil and Bolivia and Venezuela, they're different and they may have problems, but they still work together also, even though they're competing against each other. And in
Yeah.
South America, they all speak Spanish. That's the problem. You know, like in Africa, some people speak French, European, Belgian, and everything, and they see each other as different, and they identify with their colonial people. South Africa doesn't identify with its colonials, but the problem is that the South Africa has been isolated from the rest of Africa, so they have a sort of suspicion against the rest of the continent. What do you think? Yeah.
I mean, I think in terms of like the Pan African and Pan Africanist ideal, those have been some of the problems that we've been facing in terms of apartheid being an isolationist movement, with the South African Defence Force actually attacking other countries. During apartheid. I mean, they had raids in Botswana, they had raids in Mozambique, they had raids they had.
And then afterwards, when the black people take over, they still take that militant movement, not on purpose, because you see that we're taking over the apartheid government, but we're not changing the structure of the government.
Sure. So yeah, but I think back to sort of like the topic that sort of started this.
Because we only have about 5 minutes because I got to go to work. But I'll let you finish. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. It has to do with how African peoples can stake a claim on these resources, right? Because even now we are speaking about all these laws and all these regulations around mining and all these sorts of things that were put in place, not so much like with the people's input,
No.
The traditional leaderships, there are some that are now making an input and that are staking claims, but a few are not, and some of these traditional leaders themselves are corrupt. So
they're authoritarian. They're tyrants.
So they will sign contracts with big companies so that they make money, and then in turn they don't take care of communities in the way that they promised. So that way the corporates can get away with saying, no, but we gave your king so much money.
And this is why I go back to, even though I don't like him, I go back to Gaddafi. Gaddafi was a totalitarian, but in Libya, when Gaddafi was around, if you got married, you were given $20,000 for a house. So, Libya used to use this oil money to supplement, so nobody within Libya would suffer. Except, I will say, Gaddafi was racist too, because there were black people who were suffering in Libya. Continue, sorry.
Sure. But yeah, we do look to some of the positive lessons.
We look at it as positive, but I think we need to also look at what Traoré is doing. To me, Traoré is the hero of Africa right now.
I think he's perfecting the model.
And also, Malema speaks to speak, but he's a corrupt. He speaks Malema takes the right speech. He has the right theory, but he's a little bit greedy, like Animal Farm.
I don't think he has the right execution.
But I still believe him. I believe in Malema, but I think he's a little bit too much of a cult, personal cult.
So I don't know in terms of the South African conversation where this.
Also, would you agree that Zuma is a nationalist, but he's also self-interested?
I think those are the problems with because the two people that you mentioned are part of the two parties that are the most left in the political scope, but those two leaders are too self-absorbed.
Yes, and their parties, for example, in Losley needs a more powerful role in EFF.
And have also been previously corrupt in other ways.
It's corruption. But I will say that there definitely are not people who kiss the West ass. They don't kiss the West ass. I think Zuma's the type of person that says, okay, South Africa can protect its own resources, but I'm the boss. You get my point?
But I think, I mean, in terms of the SADC region, there's also Botswana, which is a good example that you mentioned earlier.
They're beautiful. That's the one you sent me with their philosopher. I call him their philosopher president, who keeps talking about philosophy. He even attacked Marxism. He says Marxism is not an African view. I don't care, but he's a Marxist. He's denying it because he wants to take an anti-West. I like what he's doing.
But I think because he wants to phrase it in Setswana.
And also Marxism did not start in Europe. Marxism is a human principle in which any part of the world people can come up with it. And like you said, he wants
Yeah,
to frame it
yeah, yeah.
his way. We
So
don't
I
have to.
think,
We don't. I'm getting tired of seeing people wear the sickle, the Russian sickle, and the beret with the beret. That's not an African concept. I understand why they're doing it, but we need to bring it more to an African expression, like what
to
Botswana wants to
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah,
Sorry for
to
cutting in front of
African
you. So you can take us out,
expression.
Lorato, in the next 2 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, I mean, we do look at places like you say, like President Traore in Burkina Faso, and the new president in Botswana, who actually is interestingly a president that came into power from what used to be an opposition party.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is an interesting story that we'll speak about. But yeah, but President Duma Boko has been making some bold moves and some bold statements. But this is, I think, founded already on the strong foundation that even the previous dispensation had been pushing for, because
Oh yeah,
they
yeah. Because
negotiated even
because I've lived. So
with
I
the
lived in the
diamond
U.S.
miners.
and sorry, I'm going to take
Yeah.
it back because we have to go. But I lived in the U.S. and even up to 20 years ago, when I was in university, I saw kids who came from Botswana, and they say our government pays for our resources pays for our education from our resources, and Botswana, all the kids were there, and they say when I finish school, I'm going back to Botswana. When I was in the U.S., my classmates, they told me our government pays for our school, but we have to come back when we finish. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah. Also,
No, for sure,
Lesotho,
for
to
sure.
a lesser degree, Lesotho. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So there are some bright spots within the South,
Yeah. Also, South
that
Africa, because we're
maybe we
seeing
can
the
pick up
shift
from.
towards EFF and PhD. It's just that the old remnants of corruption are still there, so there's still hope. To me, South Africa is still the
Yeah,
middle ground. It has hope. It can go either way. South Africa will never become a colonial country, but it could sink into chaos. It has a choice: chaos or socialism. But it's not going back to colonialism. What do you think? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, for sure. There are some tough choices that we need to make as a country in terms of
Yeah.
becoming a
Personally, I
lot
believe
more
in natural.
law abiding.
I believe in natural selection. So I believe Africa will be okay. I think the West is on its way down. Africa's in the middle ground. And because Africa is going to be the source of the new economy for BRICS, so there will be stability in Africa. But that doesn't mean that 2,000 years from now, Africa won't be effed up if we don't have the right paradigm. You get what I'm saying? I
Yeah,
think that
yeah. But I
I think
think
it's just
with
by accident Africa will be okay now because Israel, the U.S., Europe is finished. So this is Africa's moment to shine with China and Russia. But if we don't take control of ourselves, China and Russia will eat us up in the future. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, with social justice and the alleviation of poverty,
Yeah,
a lot
that's
of
all we need to do.
yeah, a
Social
lot of our
justice.
problems and lawlessness will be done away with.
Yeah. And South Africa's on the right move because it has a healthy communist movement, even though the Communist Party is not in power. The Communist Party was close to the ANC, and now you see the EFF has a lot of the communist ideas. So to me, South Africa's in the middle ground. It has the right theory, but the corruption needs to stop. And also, EFF members, Malema needs to grow